Okay, now we're going to go over some issues that may arise with the speed of loading and other issues that you might come across with your website. So let's go through some obvious detail first. One of them is you see here in this cell we've brought in an image of the background. Well, really, the way the website's designed, what we want here is we don't really need this image to be there. We just need it's just a color. So what we can do is we can delete that image completely from there, and here we can set the background color of that cell to match the rest. So never bring an image in unless you absolutely have to. In terms of color, obviously just use the web colors that are standard through all browsers, which then means it won't take any time to load. Um, Obviously the text was there, but what you'd do is you'd go through the same process as we did previously to bring the text back into there and set the background rather than an image. We'd set it as a color. So there's an obvious one. Now if we go back to my design, I mentioned originally that there was some strange looking slices here. Well, this slice here, the reason for this is because actually this is a repeated image. So what you see here as one big image, or as we see it here as 5 different images, can actually just be repeated. Let me explain. If I come back into Dreamweaver, what I've got is I've got all those images here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete those images out of those cells. Okay, that leaves me obviously blank cells here. What I'm now going to do is highlight all 5 of those cells, just come down to my properties panel, and I'm going to merge those selected cells as one. So now we've just got one large cell. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out this slice 3 as a background image. The reason I'm going to do it as a background image, as you may have already learned, is a background image will repeat unless you tell it not to. So if I find the layout image of O3 and pull that into this cell, you can see that what I've done is I've just put an image, one single image inside this cell. Okay, if I undo that, or what I'll actually do is I'll just copy it from here and delete it, and instead I'll set the background image to that. As you can see, what I've actually done is I've now pulled one image and it's repeated continuously throughout that cell. Alright, that's a really good and neat trick to do, because what I'm actually doing again is if we added up the value of all the cells that we did have, 3 kilobytes, 2 kilobytes, 4 and 3, you've obviously got a larger file that you're downloading to your users when they visit the website. What we're doing is we're just downloading one image at 2 kilobytes and it's repeating, so it actually it will load the site quicker because the image that you're downloading is smaller. It doesn't matter how many times you download or how many times you insert the same image, it's just the time it takes to download an image that's key. So it's a good way of speeding up the process. Again, I've done it at the bottom of my design, so I put a really small slice here to repeat this image here. So I'm going to repeat the same. This is slice number 21. So I come down to my design here and delete these two, highlight them, merge them, and then slice number 21. So I set my background as layout 21, and again I get exactly the same effect, but just loading a lot quicker. I'll save that and test it. You can see there's no visual difference in terms of what's happened on the site. It will just load quicker. Okay, the final part here is this slice that I've put here. The reason for this is much the same really, in terms of the way that a table works. What's actually happening here is everything's fixed. If I had some text here, which obviously you'd pull in the same way as we did with the text at the top, as that text gets bigger, in fact let's show you. So if I take that, I'll take that image now out and put it in as a background image, which means I can now type into here. If I bring in 3 paragraphs of Lorem Ipsum text and test that, you see what actually happens is the whole thing gets distorted because it's all too big. Okay, so there's too much text there. Rather than limiting yourself to the amount of text you can have there, I'm going to undo that. Rather than limiting yourself, what you can do in this cell here, we've got this image of the straight line. I'm going to keep that image in there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the button that says TD, which is the cell, and I'm going to paste the same code into the background as well. So that image is going to be there at the front. I mean, there's no need to do that. We can just delete that image. I can delete that image and it all looks the same. If we test it, then it all goes a bit skew-if. Alright, so that's the reason I've left the image in there this time. So I've left the image in there, but I've also set the same image as the background image. If we test it this time, you see that everything looks as it should. Okay, but the difference now is if we put more text into here, what actually happens this time, if we test it, is the fluidness of the site design is kept. So what, if you could see, what you would see is the image is still here and just floating here, but the background image is repeated. So it means that you don't have to limit the size of your page every time. You can keep everything flowing nicely. So that's again another good trick to try to remember when you're designing your site and also when you're slicing it. Okay, well I hope that's been of some help to you. Of course, post as many questions as you like and we'll try to get back to you. Thanks very much for listening.